Hello, everyone. Stacy Clausen here, doing a check-in with my Boston folks. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Terrific. And hopefully everyone was able to connect all right. Do we have any technical issues we need to deal with? Please let us know.
I think we're good.
Okay. Terrific. Well, I'm excited for our quarterly virtual meeting for the Student Success Center Network. And we have a full agenda today, so we'll just get started. If we could go to the agenda slide, that would be great. And I welcome those of you who are interested and able to join us on video. As usual, no pressure, but it's fun to see everybody's faces. So I'm going to kick us off. Great to see everyone in June at the end of our school year, and I hope you all are well into your summers. I know some people still are in the middle of their school sessions. Like in Seattle, we don't end school until the very, very end of June, like the 28th. So different here on the Pacific Northwest. But looking forward to seeing you next month in July. And today we have a fun agenda for us, and then we have some business items, but excited to bring some folks here to do some peer learning. We've heard a lot of feedback from our previous virtual meetings, and we've taken that into account, and we've created some space for some dialogue and learning across the network. So we're going to start with this today and see how that goes. Looking forward to the conversations as you see in front of us. Peer learning with Michigan and New Jersey, and we'll hear from Andrea as she introduces them in a few minutes. We'll also talk about the July meeting and any preparations about that, and really excited to have our committees in place. So Cynthia and Lexi will be introducing that and what we can expect to happen in July. And then finally, we have some updates at the end. We'll talk a little bit about Student Success Center events and update upcoming reminders for July, but also want to hear from Sarah. She has an update she wants to share about First in the World. So before we jump in, I just want to do a welcome, because I think we have some new folks on the line. We have two new executive directors that I want to introduce today. The first of which, unfortunately, is not able to be here, Andrew Clegg from Arizona, because Arizona has their first or inaugural convening with members of their Student Success Center, and there are also members of the Student Success Center Network there. So we have Erica Orion from Michigan and Christy Short from Texas, and then folks from JFS, Jen Geffels and Stacy Holliday, who are working with Arizona, and then Chris Baldwin will be there. So they have a full day, and we look forward to hearing how that goes. So welcome, Andrew, and we hope your event goes well. Look forward to seeing you in July. And then we also have Abby Ivey from Florida, the new executive director. So I'm going to pause for a minute and see if Abby's on the line. So not sure if she's here, but we welcome Abby, and we're really excited for Florida to have their new executive director, and we'll see her in July as well. She's getting up to speed. She's very familiar with the system there, and so we'll have a lot to learn from her, and she'll be hosting us in Fort Lauderdale. So I will pass it off to our first thing on the agenda, and that's the peer learning. And I'll hand it over to Andrea Juncos to introduce that. Thank you.
Thanks, Stacy. Hi, everyone. It's Andrea Juncos in Boston. And I'm just going to be really brief and welcoming. We have two centers, as Stacy shared, that are going to be sharing today. And this is really the direction that we want to continue evolving these quarterly meetings, to have more of a focus on bringing your voices and really learning from each other and sharing about the great work that you're doing. And we've been integrating that peer learning in a lot of different touch points that we have with you all on these meetings, in person at our meetings, and also in the peer learning conversations that are sometimes smaller groups around a specific topic. So we're very much looking forward to hearing from Michigan and New Jersey today. And with that, I want to introduce and pass it on to Jenny Shanker from the for Success, and Nika Hogan, who is from WestEd and has other titles that we're going to show on the screen. Becky, if you don't mind advancing. From Pasadena City College. And yeah, I welcome you. We're really excited to hear about your work. I want to hear from you for a few minutes and then also open it up for any questions. And I will say that we know that Jenny and Nika have another engagement to attend to, so we're going to keep the conversation going with them till about 3:30, and then we'll segue. I'll introduce Jake from New Jersey. So with that, I welcome Jenny and Nika to please welcome and share what you would like to share with the network.
Hi, everybody. You have my PowerPoint? You're going to advance to the next slide?
Yes. Thanks, Becky.
Oh, there's me. Oh, my gosh. Wow. Where did that come from? Okay, there we are. Welcome, and Nika and I are excited to be here with you today. And we want to talk about the meetings that we convened in March, along with Nika. And also, I should mention, Hannah Lar from CCRC was also part of these presentations, but the focus was on this idea of putting learning at the center of guided pathways. Next, please. So just backing up a little bit, we were really excited to be able to partner with Nika and with WestEd and the Reading Apprenticeship Program in general, because when we started the Center for Student Success, we were focused quite strongly on increasing faculty involvement in student success agendas. We started our center kind of straight off the report from Achieving the Dream that said that, that the innovation, if innovation doesn't happen in the classroom, that there's too much work going on in the margins. And so we really wanted to focus on faculty leadership, and we started a faculty leadership council in our first year with the center, had a number of representatives who tried to help us kind of focus. And one of the things that we started was this idea of regional faculty conversations, which we've now been having then every year, a series of 3 or 4 meetings. And the second year that we had our regional faculty meetings, one of the recommendations was that we try to bring in some more information about reading apprenticeship. And so that was when I first met with Nika, and she came with us, and it turned out that she had roots in Michigan as well. She has family here, and was excited to come and kind of go on the road show with us at the Regional Faculty Conversations, and did kind of a quick introduction to reading apprenticeship. And then in subsequent years, we have brought her back to do a little bit more in-depth conversation about reading apprenticeship. We did a 2-day workshop in Traverse City, and then we actually did a reading apprenticeship for STEM workshop in Ludington a couple of summers ago. So we have a history. We have several individuals in Michigan who are trained as reading apprenticeship facilitators in our community of practice, and we're really found that this model and this framework really resonates with our faculty. Kind of to fast forward a little bit, we are also engaged in Michigan in building transfer pathways in our top 12 majors. So we've been convening large groups of faculty from universities and community colleges to talk about what are the courses that students should be taking, both in the discipline, and then also for example, in the math course that they would choose for that program, and what do students need in the first 2 years to make sure that they can graduate with a bachelor's degree on time. So that's been a big focus for us. And at the same time, we've been, since 2014, working on implementing guided pathways. And we've kind of, chugged along through the practice areas, beginning with a pretty big focus on mapping. And then we've spent some time with monitoring progress and intake. And we're kind of chugging along now to this idea about what about pillar number 4 and our engagement with guided pathways practices in ensuring that students are learning. And so all of this kind of came together and coalesced around, and then when we had JFF said that they were going to start partnering with WestEd, and Mika was at the meeting last July in Fort Lauderdale, we just started kind of some synergy going with the idea that all of these things could come together, and using reading apprenticeship and our history with reading apprenticeship is kind of a jumping off point for how people learn in general. Go ahead and go to the next slide. And I'm going to go ahead and let Mika talk a little bit here, but this is kind of the guiding question that we, I think, started noodling around with as we began to plan this, which is what do we know about how learning works? How can we transform and redesign our institutions to better support learning? And what can we teach our college network? So Nika, did you have anything you wanted to add there?
Just that, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, just that this is the question that I see many stakeholders grappling with. I feel like the Michigan network is kind of advanced in so many ways, as Jenny is describing. All of these are really kind of idealized setups for working on guided pathways. So much progress, so much hard work, and so much accomplishment. But somehow to challenge the field and say, if we are not transforming our institutions using what we know about how learning works, then I don't know what we're doing, because that is primarily what we are here to do, is to transform learning. So, I mean, that has a lot to do with guided pathways, because it's everything from class size to classroom setup to obviously how teaching and learning are happening in the various domains across campus, classrooms, offices, and everywhere. So we wanted to inspire that conversation.
Yeah, and this has been a really fun collaboration for us. You can go ahead and advance to the next slide. So kind of, and we fast forward through a lot of interesting talk and discussion, and we kind of landed on, it was a 2-day event, and so on one day we focus on what you'll see here, which is embedding active learning in gateway courses, and that is where we invited the faculty from the My Transfer Pathways group, people who had been part of those My Transfer Pathway discussions in phase 1 or phase 2. So we're talking about, when we talk about those top 12 groups, that's biology, and we've had biology, communication, psychology, so kind of those liberal arts kind of disciplines we're about to tackle. We've started to tackle now English. But we invited faculty, particularly in the liberal arts disciplines, to come to this day, and you can see how we mapped out our agenda. But what we really wanted to do was to give them a really strong sense of how what we're doing in guided pathways really linked up with what they're doing. Oh, and I see that this slide, this is my fault, right? So we have embedding active learning in gateway courses is the title, but this is really the schedule for the first day, which is student learning plans. So pretend you can't see the title of the slide, and really it was about moving from the other day, the first day was from moving from program maps to student learning plans, and what does it mean to really embed learning in a plan. And so we talked a little bit about what CCRC has been seeing in the field as colleges are working on Pillar 4. And then we spent quite a bit of time talking about building academic literacy into the student plan. So what does that mean to be kind of academically literate across the curriculum, so that it's more than, the plan is more than just take this course now and take this course now. What about those kind of college knowledge skills, those generalizable behaviors and attitudes that students might exhibit, and how do we embed opportunities? Because also, lots of times people decide that they want to have they're going to put all this in their student success seminar, and maybe they have a 1-credit student success seminar that's required, or maybe even it's a 3-credit one, but really, this really should be happening across all of the courses that students are taking, particularly in those first couple of semesters. So we really focused on that. We talked about how to foster faculty collaboration, and we talked about then a little bit about how to set up your evaluation so that as you're starting to build interventions, you're ready to discover if they're going to work. And now you can go on to the next one. And pretend like this one has the title of Embedding Student Learning in Gateway Courses. So in this one, we talked about sort of a closer look at teaching and learning practices, and then this idea, what does it mean to be an apprentice in the arts and sciences? So again, we were focusing kind of on liberal arts courses rather than the career ed classes. And then how could reading apprenticeship and the principles of reading apprenticeship provide a framework for that? So it was a great 2 days of conversations. I think it was really fantastic. So we had a mix of attendees. On the first day, we had more attendees who were leading guided pathways work on their campuses. On the second day, we had more faculty, but we had a number of those guided pathways leads that also stayed for the second day so that they could see how these two pieces fit together. And we had a lot of really positive feedback. And I'm gonna stop there just for a second to see if anybody has any questions about the logistics before I let Nika talk more about the framework that she used to present this work, and that really kind of made it all hang together. And I don't hear any questions. So go ahead and advance to the next slide, and I'll let Nika take it away.
So it's kind of overwhelming when we think about all of the work that we've been doing for guided pathways and how do we ensure that learning is really at the center. And I think that, so we focused on 3 frameworks that could be helpful for, oh, sorry, I was just looking at the chat. I can sort of speak to how we got into the equity conversation here. So the first one is the Reading Apprenticeship Framework, and as Jenny has mentioned, that was something that, we have a history, and we've done a lot of really good work. The Reading Apprenticeship Framework is just a way of thinking about how to structure the teaching and learning environment, and it focuses on 4 domains: personal, social, cognitive, and knowledge building. And it focuses on texts, but we have a really broad definition of literacy. So we're not just, when people hear about it, they often think that this is an English thing, but this is actually, we're talking about the literacy that you need in physics class, the literacy that you need in the financial aid office, all kinds of literacies, and including the and English literacies. And so that framework gets at equity questions because being outside of a discourse community is one of the most painful experiences that many people have and that newer college students have. And unfortunately, it happens all the time because as experts, faculty or people running like the financial aid office, we are blind to the fact that we're using a specialized discourse because that's just how we talk and that's just how we read and that's just how we write. And so this framework focuses on metacognition for everybody so that the educators can be more mindful of how their discourses work, and then they can more intentionally invite students in And then the students, by being metacognitive, they can be surfacing what meaning they're making during class in reading and in problem solving. And then the teacher gets a lot more information to work from. So all of that, and the focus on metacognitive conversation, the focus on subject-specific or domain-specific discourse is all in the new book, How People Learn Too, that the National Academies of Sciences put out. So we actually gave, what we always do reading, because, reading apprenticeship, and we actually gave participants a chunk of that text to read, and just to be aware of it, because that's a large part of, if we're going to put learning at the center, we need to stay up on the research. And they just updated this tome from all of the neuroscience research about how learning actually works. So reading apprenticeship is one that really gets at everything that that the scientists are telling us about what we need to do for learning to transfer to the next level. But we also talked about how do we it's something like reading apprenticeship. It's not like it's a framework, and you need to think about it, and you need to work on it, and you need to practice it, and everything's not going to work perfectly, and you need a community, basically. So we also introduced community of practice theory just a little bit, just to give people the sense that basically nothing's going to happen, no real change is going to happen if they are not able to build knowledge and build relationships as we go. So in other words, what's the professional learning that's going to accompany the changes that you're trying to structure? And so community of practice is a way to think about that. And then finally, we also introduced threshold concepts to the faculty teaching the gateway courses as just a way, and this is something Hannah Lahr spoke to really powerfully, that we need to be thinking at the program level, not the course level, and we need to be thinking on the conceptual level, not the, what's the word I'm looking for? When it's not conceptual, it's just the nuts and bolts, procedural level. Thank you, I found my word. So again, all of these are really helpful frameworks that we tried to offer, that they all go together really well to invite people into thinking about how to use the science of how people learn as they continue on their guided pathways work.
Thank you so much. Well, I just want to pause. This is Andrea. I'm seeing that this is the last slide, Nika, that you and Jenny have, so I'd love to just open it up for any questions for the last few minutes. We know that this is a conversation that could continue for a long time, and we will have more opportunities, including in July, to talk more about this kind of aspect of ensuring students are learning in general. But we'd love to hear questions or comments from the group. You're welcome to put them in the chat box or to unmute yourself and just chime in. And maybe as folks are thinking, I'd also just say to Jenny and Nika, if there's any kind of questions that you're interested in asking to the group about your work and what's next, I think that would also be interesting to hear.
Yeah, hi, I'm in my car now, so I'm not able to monitor the questions on the chat, but I know that I wanted to just take a second to elaborate. Stacy had asked about the equity conversation, and the conversation, we're really trying to open that conversation up in Michigan. We're really just getting started, and we used the KPI data from Jackson College as an example, where, to see in terms of those early leading indicator KPIs, how you can look at those and see achievement gaps. And that was, I think, kind of eye-opening for people. And we talked about how most of our colleges are using the voluntary framework for accountability, and that, or they'll be pulling their own data based on the KPIs. So we just wanted to get them started thinking about how you could start collecting that data.
So we have a question. How was academic literacy introduced? Was it part of the reading apprenticeship framework? So yeah, that's what we are the Reading Apprenticeship Framework is really kind of focused on identifying and supporting the development of academic literacy in any domain. So we work with student services professionals, we work with STEM scientists, physics, chemistry, biology, we work with writing instructors, we work with people from 4-year schools and 2-year schools and middle and high school. So it's a very flexible framework, but it gets at that question. Literacy is at the heart of disciplinary learning. And so it really is of great support because this framework is applicable in so many areas. It's kind of lends itself really well to working, cross-institutionally, so that people can be thinking about their own domain and how to support the students working in that domain. But there's this common framework to be discussing, and so that can really help with relationship building and knowledge building across an entire institution, which can be really powerful. So basically, I feel like if we support academic literacy, we are supporting learning. And so it's almost like a shortcut. It's almost like a superpower. So I don't know if that resonates for people, but it's kind of like, my son plays Little League, and it's like, when you can't, if you can't throw that ball, you're not in the game. There are certain things that you need to be able to at least do passively, or at least feel like you can, like you've got a hope that you can hang in there, or you're not in the game. And I feel like supporting people with those discourse shifts as they go from high school to college or from discipline to discipline, that's helping them stay in the game.
Nika and Jenny, if you're still on the line, if you have time for one more question, I'm wondering the last point you have on the slide, the threshold concepts. How did the faculty and staff respond to your focus at the program level versus the course level? I am asking that because it seems like that's such an important shift for us all as we do program mapping and as we connect to industry standards, et cetera. But I've seen that being difficult sometimes.
Yeah, well, and this is something that we've used a lot in California. So I had experience and wasn't surprised that it really was, at a certain point, we invited people to get into discipline-based groups and work together to try to figure out what some threshold concepts might be. So basically, a threshold concept is like this thing that if you don't know it, you cannot move forward in the discipline, but it's always troublesome, it's always counterintuitive, and once you know it, you can't unknow it. So it becomes sort of instantly invisible to you as an expert, and therefore much harder to teach. And so it's not always easy for people to generate threshold concepts. And so, but it's different based on discipline. So our STEM, like we had a chemistry table and a biology table, they were having a wonderful time. They loved talking to each other about their threshold concepts. In those disciplines, there's a high level of agreement about what the discipline is about, whereas our humanities tables tend to have harder conversations because in our disciplines, I'm an English person, we have a lot of dissent. It's highly contested. What is our discipline all about? What's really at the core of our discipline? We have a lot more fractures within our sort of leadership of our disciplines. Lots of camps. And so, those conversations can be really delightful because they connect people with the thing that they fell in love with, and they also can be really hard. I've had people dissolve into tears on more than one occasion, but this is the work that we have to do, because if our whole department can't get together and have a conversation about what we're doing and why, I don't know what kind of pathway we're providing, So it worked well, and I am hopeful that it sort of launched that thought of what is that important learning that needs to happen? Because identifying that's the first step, and then how do you get there and support it? Then that comes next.
Yeah, this is Jenny. I would say to follow up, in May we did our regional faculty conversations again, and we introduced a little bit of this idea of a threshold concept and this idea, you know, in an effort to do just exactly what you were saying, Stacy, that we need to move from a focus on what happens in my course to what is the program of study look like for the student, and what commonalities are there between and among sequential courses that, you know, and we used this kind of just very, very brief, and there was no crying, which was good. You know, a very brief kind of conception of threshold courses, threshold concepts, to as a little bit of an organizing principle around that, because it is important when you're working with faculty and you're talking about guided pathways to kind of get them to rise above the course and see the program as a whole.
So this is Andrea. I just want to pause, and I know, Jenny, you are headed to the airport, and we only have a couple minutes, so there is one question that I just want to flag and then see if Jenny or Nika has time to answer it. From Kathy in the chat is asking, is this the same or different from what Tristan Denley's academic mindset, purpose of coursework, connection to the institution, belief they are capable, confidence in interacting with faculty, staff, /grit. So just wanted to see if Nika or Jenny had a moment to chime in on that. If not, we can come back to it.
I can, yeah. I was just starting to write back into the chat. So one of the differences, it's very highly compatible. We care a lot with the Reading Apprenticeship Framework. We talk a lot about motivation. We talk a lot about productive persistence and productive struggle. We talk a lot about the personal and connecting to the institution and to the coursework, for sure. So all of those things. But one of the things that makes it different, and to my mind, it was just as a faculty member, just what I was looking for, just what I needed help with, because we're also focused on the cognitive and knowledge building aspects of learning in any domain. And so for myself as an instructor, I was good. I had good instincts about the social and the personal, although my colleagues made fun of me and said I was too touchy-feely and I was just trying to win a popularity contest. But thank goodness the neuroscientists did their studies and showed us that the affective domain does matter, so I triumphed. But still, I was good at that part, but I was not good at pushing my students to do more work, more rigorous work, and successfully. I didn't know how to get there. I didn't know how to get them to do that really sometimes painful work, because it's basically sit-ups and push-ups for your brain, some of the cognitive work that we need to do. And it's amazing what any of us can accomplish in a relatively short amount of time if we actually do the work. For example, do real push-ups with arms rather than lift the bottom up and down, which is my preferred way of getting through Pilates class. So it's that really targeted support for the cognitive and the knowledge building and the metacognition that is, and all of it in a really deep disciplinary context, because we are looking at what are the texts that we need to have students grapple with. How can we have them grapple with it? How do we spend time with text? It really gets more into deep disciplinary learning, so very contextual in any one domain or context.
Thank you. Well, thank you so much, Jenny and Nika. We know you both have somewhere to go, and we just really appreciate your taking the time, and we're looking forward to continue these conversations offline, but we want to thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. Thanks, Jenny, too. So I want to shift gears and thank you. Also introduce Jake Farbman, the ED of our New Jersey Center, who's also pictured on the slides here. Amy Girardi, my JSF colleague, and I were in New Jersey very recently, where Jake was hosting a meeting where he shared some of the information that he's going to share with us today. We're really excited to hear about the work of the New Jersey Center, particularly around looking ahead to how New Jersey is going to be supporting adult students and also connecting students with social services. So Jake, I would like to turn it over to you. We have the power of the slides on our end, so just let us know when you want us to advance them.
Okay, please advance right now.
Okay. Excellent.
Thanks. Stacy, thank you for the opportunity to share this with all the executive directors throughout the country. And I can't emphasize enough, Andrea, Amy, how important and how critical your role has been with all of this leading up to this point and going forward. It's just been a terrific partnership and very beneficial to us here in New Jersey. So thank you very much. This all started probably last summer when I had the opportunity to come to the JFF convening in Fort Lauderdale. And I heard the president from St. Pete's talking about what can we do to better serve our students so that no matter when they leave us, they're in a better position than when they came to us. So Aaron Fichtner, our president, and I started having some conversations with our presidents, community college presidents here in New Jersey. And based on those conversations, we're developing something we're calling Vision 2028, a framework for the future of community colleges. We're actually having the formal launch of this document next Monday, and I'd be happy to share the full document with the network once it's available. But basically, the state of New Jersey has set a degree attainment goal that 65% of the working population will hold a post-secondary credential by the year 2025. And the only way the state is going to reach that attainment goal is if the community colleges step up and really play a major role in all of this. If you can advance to the next slide. The reason why this is critical, when you think of New Jersey, it's that we're typically thought of as a high degree attainment state, which we are. We're number 7 in the nation. But there were times when we were number 1, number 2, and number 3. So we've slipped significantly over the last 20 years. If you can flip to the next slide. Now, what's really eye-opening is that if you start looking at some of the opportunity and attainment gaps, New Jersey's got some serious problems. So you can see just by percentages there, the differences in race and ethnicity among Caucasians, African Americans, and Hispanics. But the point is, if you flip to the next slide, we have the 4th highest college degree attainment gap between Caucasians and African Americans in the country. We have the 9th highest degree attainment gap between Caucasians and Hispanics in the country. So that really started to get us to think that we've got to do more. And if you flip to the next slide, you'll see that while New Jersey is a very dense state by geography, of our 21 counties, we have some counties that exceed the statewide average of 53% with a post-secondary credential, and some counties that aren't even at 35%. And there are numerous disparities throughout the state, whether it's workforce opportunity related, whether it's challenges to being new immigrants to the country or refugees, whether it's clearly defined paths and pathways that lead to credentials and careers. There are just numerous challenges. If you flip to the next slide, I'll give you another example of a challenge. So the United Way of Northern New Jersey did a pretty comprehensive study, and it calls it ALICE, which stands for Asset Limited, Income Constrained, but Employed. And these are folks who do work, but they don't make enough money to afford basic necessities like food, transportation, clothing, things of that nature. So if you put the ALICE households together with the folks living in poverty, we have close to 40% of the households in New Jersey that are struggling to make ends meet each day. And that was a real eye-opener for us here in Trenton, that while our community colleges have a great foundation to build on, while we serve 325,000 students annually in various programs, we're not doing enough. We're certainly not doing enough. Now, the other thing to this is that as we start talking about what are we going to do to address this, we had to realize that we can't do it alone. The council can't do it alone. The 19 community colleges can't do it alone. We can't do it as 20 entities working together. We need to build comprehensive partnerships throughout the state with local and statewide partners, because community colleges themselves don't have the funding to be social service agencies, and social service agencies aren't institutions of higher education. So we're really looking to strengthen what it is we do holistically in New Jersey and how we provide pathways and help to pretty much the same populations of people we're working with. The folks at United Way of Northern New Jersey are their constituents are constituents who go to community colleges in Northern New Jersey. So we're all mixed together, we're all intertwined. It's just a matter of how do we all come to the table, determine which organizations have what strengths, and how can we utilize those strengths to the best interests so that we're serving our constituents. So if you can go to the next slide. We have, of our Vision 2028 document, we have 4 initiatives that are going to be launched. They're pretty much underway right now, but 2 of those initiatives are going to fall within the locus of control of the Center for Student Success going forward. And number 1 is to increase the number of adults connected to post-secondary opportunities. Number 2 is to remove the barriers that students face when it comes to accessing social service supports. When Aaron and I had these conversations with our presidents and said, you know, we've made some progress in partnerships with high schools to deliver dual enrollment to students who otherwise may not have access to it. We've made progress working with high schools to deliver developmental education before they graduate high school so they're college ready when they come to us. We've made progress reforming our developmental education programs in New Jersey. We've made progress implementing guided pathways. What else can we do? And every president said the same thing, not necessarily in this order. 1, get me more adults in the door because the high school population is declining, but we have to ensure that we have affordable, accessible pathways for those adults to be successful and get good jobs. 2, the students who are here are hungry. They may be homeless or couch surfing. They may need child support. They may need access to mental health services. So there are a whole host of things that overlap and intertwine. And when we heard all of that, we started thinking, okay, how can we move forward in really helping our community colleges do all of this? So if you go to the next slide, one of the challenges in New Jersey is that we have 3 million adults who have no post-secondary degree. 2 million have no education after high school. Another million have some college but no credential. So we're starting to strategize ways in how can we partner with organizations that work with these populations of adults to help them get on a pathway back to the community college. If you can flip to the next slide. Many of you have seen these before. In the work that you do day in and day out in your states. Adults have various family responsibilities, work commitments. They can't necessarily afford to go back to community college, and that's key here in New Jersey because our governor just launched a new free community college program, College Promise program. We call it the Community College Opportunity Grant here in New Jersey, and the goal is to expand it by the end of the budget season, which ends June 30th. So that it's statewide at all 19 community colleges. Currently, students qualify if they have an annual household income of $45,000 or less. We're hoping to raise that income requirement so that more people will have opportunity to take advantage of the program. It's open to returning adult students, students right out of high school, no restrictions on any of that. Many adults fear coming back to school because of their past academic performance. Maybe they didn't quite get out of high school with the best grades that they had hoped. Adults have the same need for social service supports that our students do. We as community colleges don't offer the best flexible course schedules, nor are our student support services open when adults come to take classes. So we've got to do some internal reflection and self-evaluation to strengthen what we do to meet the needs of adults. So if you can flip to the next slide. We came up with a pretty comprehensive list of just what types of barriers students face that are non-academic. And you'll see them on the screen here. They're hungry, they need housing, they have trouble getting to and from community college, they need child care, they need access to health care and mental health care, Many students have technology barriers in that they have access to the internet when they're on campus, but not necessarily when they're home. Two things that are critical: there may be some students who have troubles with substance abuse, but just as important, there are students who are caring for family members who may have substance abuse problems. There are students in New Jersey that need help obtaining child support, financial child support, so that they can make ends meet each week. We have students in New Jersey who suffer from an array or have an array of disabilities that we need to do a better job of meeting, and we see that as helping to provide more professional development through the center to our faculty and staff throughout the state. We also have a population in New Jersey, the corrections population, reentry population transitioning back to community colleges. We have 4 or 5 of our community colleges that have strategic partnerships with the state's prison system and are delivering college courses to incarcerated people. And we've got to do a better job of connecting folks once they are finished with their sentences to the community colleges and getting them pathways back to their communities. So basically, that's a lot of what the work we're going to be doing going forward. I mentioned that there are 4 initiatives going forward. The other 2, just so you know, very similar to what we just heard from Michigan. One is we're calling it a commitment to the essential skills and abilities students need to be successful in their lives, careers, and engaged members of a very diverse democracy. We see that as a commitment, renewed commitment to the humanities and to the arts, and the ability to reason, ask questions, think critically, communicate, work in teams, those critical skills, essential skills that are valuable regardless of occupation. That's one large initiative that we're also working on. We're also going to launch a career credential program, statewide career credential program, which we refer to internally as Guided Pathways 2.0. It takes all the work that our community colleges have done to create program maps for students, connect them to high schools, connect them to four-year schools, connect them to employers. This career credential program is going to be employer-driven with advisory groups in the same sector that are going to help inform the curriculum, inform the credentials that are needed, and help us so that we have various entrance ramps and various exit ramps for students. So if they only have an opportunity to come back for one semester, they get a credential that's valued in the labor market, they can get a job. That student is better served by coming to a community college compared to now, student comes for a semester, has to stop out, and we just wait and wait and wait for that student to re-enroll. Other than all that, on May 30th, Andrea mentioned on May 30th, we had our first major event of the Center for Student Success since I've been given the opportunity here in New Jersey. We call it the Economic Mobility Advisory Meeting, where we reached out to a number of partners for the first time. We've never done anything like this before. We were pretty excited about the response. We had over 60 attendees. I'd say 20 came from state government, so some folks we're already working with in the Department of Human Services. Some of our students in New Jersey are now eligible for SNAP food stamp benefits, thanks to some regulations the state put into place. Department of Labor, Office of the Secretary of Higher Education, Department of Education, Adult Education Office, Agency for the Blind. So a number of state partners joined us. So about a third of them were from there. About a third were statewide and regional nonprofits who we'd never worked with before. So the New Jersey Mental Health Association, the International Rescue Committee, which works with refugees and new immigrants to New Jersey to help them get settled and get the skills they need to be productive in the workforce here, help them with pathways to citizenship as well. In addition to Jobs for the Future, MDRC joined us because we launched an initiative with MDRC to bring the Success Program to a few of our community colleges in New Jersey. I mentioned the United Way of Northern New Jersey. We also have an anti-hunger coalition that's joined us, and we have a statewide anti-poverty coalition that's made up of several nonprofits that joined us as well. So the next steps going forward, I've followed up with all of these folks, and I'm going to be meeting with those who are interested in working with us going forward one-on-one. And then as we solidify more and more partners specifically, we're going to be building to this economic mobility coalition so that we start to have meetings and we start to develop actionable steps so that we can move forward working with our community colleges, our partners, so that we can implement a few things. One, we want to make sure that adults have seamless pathway to community college. Two, we want to make sure that students have a seamless pathway to apply for social support services if they need them. That's very much been inspired by the work that Jenny, you and Erica did in Michigan and the presentation we saw back in January in Texas. If you haven't seen it, folks, the folks in Michigan have a terrific online portal that allow students, residents, you name it, one-stop access online so that they can apply for social support services. Now in New Jersey, student has to get a form signed and notarized at the college, then take it over to the county welfare agency, then wait in line there. So we've got to have some conversations to figure out how can we streamline all of this and how can we make it so that a student can easily apply for, you name the list of benefits the student may need. And one thing I'll add before I start taking some questions and comments, and I said this publicly at the event, this is not strictly community college focused, meaning we're not trying to increase enrollment, increase graduation rates, all that stuff so that we can look good. That's not what this is about. This is about working collectively and holistically so that we're serving our constituents in a better way. It's reciprocal. So just as much as we want more students to come in the door and get on a pathway, we want to be able to go to the county welfare agencies, go to the Department of Labor. We want to be able to go to our one-stop career centers and say, hey, look, you folks need help. How can we help you get your constituents on a pathway? So it's really reciprocal is how we see this going forward. So that's all I have at this point. Any questions? Folks, you know I get really enthusiastic, so I'd go on forever. I'm sure you don't want to hear me for the next, ever.
Thanks, Jake. This is so great, and there's been some exciting, endorsements in the chat. So I do see a question that I want to flag from Elizabeth Brand. She says Oregon is developing a statewide anti-poverty coalition. Would you mind sharing the list of participating agencies, nonprofits, community-based organizations that are part of the New Jersey effort?
Absolutely. I'll send you a link to the New Jersey Anti-Poverty Coalition. And what's interesting is that I've had several conversations with the executive director there, and we went to our first meeting of the whole group of partners. And when I presented this topic for 20 seconds, it's a good presentation when people flock to you. So all these people I'd never heard of, organizations I'd never heard of, came to me and said, we want to be a part of this. We want to be a part probably about a dozen people. So I've added those folks to the list to follow up with. But yeah, I'd say if your state has an anti-poverty coalition, that's a great place to start because all of these folks are already doing the work that they're doing. And the other thing about anti-poverty in New Jersey, when I looked at the list of members, 0 institutions of higher education belong to the anti-poverty network in New Jersey. That changed. Council County Colleges is joining. So I just think there's a strong connection there, especially for our community colleges.
Thanks, Jake. And yeah, there's more interest in seeing that list as well. So maybe on the Basecamp listserv, you could share that out, or through our team.
Absolutely.
Yes. And some kudos from Laura in Virginia as well. Virginia's created a task force to look at how to address these issues. Virginia would love to see the list of partners for inspiration as well. So,
sure.
Yeah, any other questions either in the chat? Here's one from Mike Leach in Arkansas. What was the food stamp policy change that you referenced? Can you elaborate on that?
Sure. Hi, Mike. So back in November 2018, the Department of Human Services, with the support of the governor, announced that students who are enrolled in Perkins-eligible programs at community colleges now qualify to apply for SNAP benefits. I'm not a social worker, nor have I ever worked for the Department of Human Services, but to my best informed knowledge, it's a federal program, but states have some control over who can be eligible and who can't. And what the big policy shift here is that the work students are doing in Perkins eligible programs, which are designed to get them right into the workforce as opposed to transferring on, that work counts as satisfying the work-related element that students have to show, or I should say that folks have to show when they're applying for SNAP benefits. So that was the policy shift. And we have 60,000 students enrolled statewide in Perkins eligible programs. Of those 60,000, about, I think it's 30,000, so about half, 30,000 of them receive federal and state financial aid. So there's certainly a bucket there of students who can apply for this and might be eligible.
Thank you. And I see some notes in the chat from Dave on the JFF team that the New Jersey policy that Jake is referencing is in JFF's policy scan, one of the indicators, 15C. And Lexi from JFF also shared a resource there on SNAP, including employment and training funding. Also, Mike thanks you and says that's great. Several states have done that, and that Arkansas is also trying.
Andrea, I don't want to monopolize time, but I do have one thing. And folks, if we don't have time to talk about it, but if your state has done this and you can, we can connect and talk on the phone, that'd be great. So one of the challenges we have here in New Jersey is we want to find ways that we can braid these various federal and state-funded programs that are specifically tied to our Department of Labor. We've got a little bit of an advantage is that our new president used to be the commissioner of the Department of Labor. So what he told me was in New Jersey, the way it works is that if I'm a math teacher and I lose my job, I go to my county workforce, county welfare agency or the workforce board, and I apply to get retrained for another job. But if the state comes back to me and says, oh, well, there are dozens of math teacher jobs open, we're not going to pay for you to change your career. You have to go apply for one of these other jobs. So there's a barrier there, right? So if people want to change their careers and they want to get funding to do that, to go back to community college, get a degree or credential, if they're in an in-demand if they're in an in-demand position right now, they're not going to get that support. So my question to all of you is, if any of your states have worked around that in some way, shape, or form, if you could just, send me an email and then we can connect and talk about it. I'd like to get your ideas about how your state was able to get around that and braid some of these programs together to better serve your students.
Thanks, Jake. And yeah, I would encourage folks to get in touch with you, and also just want to flag that we're going to have continued conversation in July when we're all together, opportunities for more peer conversations and the ability to kind of connect this with the strategic plan activities that we know you and others are leading that we're going to be working on. So with that, I want to thank you, Jake, so much for sharing. We look forward to seeing how this all unfolds looking ahead.
Thank you.
So thanks. So I am going to turn it over to Lexi at JFF for the next portion.
And thanks so much, Jake and Team Michigan. Those are both just amazing and invigorating examples of really cool work that's happening. I'm going to talk just very, very quickly with Cynthia Farrell about the upcoming SSCN and TSN meetings. So we're going to just do a couple of little highlights and poll you on a couple of questions. So Cynthia, I'd love to have us kick off the conversation with you and just have you tell us a little bit about what is going to happen in the morning session of the SSCN meeting on the next slide.
Okay, thanks to both Michigan and New Jersey. I really appreciated your presentations. I thought that was great this morning. And very much appreciate the work that folks have been doing around the strategic plan and gearing up with the new committee. So thank you for volunteering. And we have some good, strong committees set up. So I just want to tell you, leading into the morning session when we'll be together in Florida, there's kind of three-step process. So first, the committees are having an informal intro or prep call that will precede the meeting. And then we'll be together in the morning, where the bulk of it will be used for the strategic plan committees to do their work. And then we'll have some time for all of us to share out. So the way and then the third piece will be that coming out of our meeting in Florida, then we will have more information about our quarterly goals and targets that we'll want to hit. And so we'll just keep it flowing through that planning process. So when we're together in Florida, what we want to do is, we'll get an agenda out to you for specifics, but the real crux of the meeting will be around a little over an hour that we're going to set aside for the committees to meet together in separate groups. And we have the worksheet. If you recall, back in January, we had an action planning worksheet, so we're going to bring those back out, and we've added some columns to it, so that it can help guide your documentation of your plans around quarterly targets for your group. And then we're going to set aside about an hour for each one of the groups, so about 15 minutes for each of 4 groups to tell us what you're planning on doing and get feedback from the group to build, not only understanding what each group is doing, but to also build that ownership and collaboration across the committees. So I'm going to stop there and ask, Lexi, I think you're going to have the committees then say a word.
Yep, great. Thanks, Cynthia. And feel free to share questions in the chat. And just a quick reminder, we do have a skeleton agenda that was shared in the last digest, so feel free to check out the overall flow of the day. Becky, can you go to the next slide? So I'm going to very quickly have each of the leads of the 4 committees, if they are on, introduce themselves and just share something they're excited about for their committee and when they have their first meeting. So Jennifer, I think you are on if you want to go ahead.
Great, thanks Lexi. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
So we basically for our committee, we're objective number 1. So I'm the executive director of the New York State Student Success Center, and I'm housed at the State University of New York SUNY. And we have members from Ohio, from Virginia, Oregon, and Texas on our committee, and are very excited that Laura, Elizabeth, and Christy are going to help with some of the thinking around this objective. And Lexi is our JFF support person with us, so we're very excited about that. Our objective, as you can see, is looking at growing and sustaining the network as a leader in post-secondary success and building infrastructure for collaboration. So I think in the webinar on the strategic plan, many of you heard some of the elements of this and the deliverables, and we're excited about this work because I think we can really, working together, put together a plan that will help solidify some of the collaborations and the exciting work we're already doing, but then grow that for the future. So thank you.
Great. Thanks, Jennifer. I believe Jenny is hopefully on a plane if all is well. Amy Girardi, did you want to do a quick intro for number 2?
Hey, actually, no, I've just arrived at the airport, so I'm not on the plane. So hi, I'm Jenny from the Michigan Center for Student Success. Erica and I are happy to be co-leading objective number 2. And we have on our committee with us, we have Garrett from Ohio and Kathy from Hawaii. And hang on just a second, I pulled up my email so I could see who is all with us. Looks Sandy from California. And I think we have scheduled our meeting, but I don't have access to my calendar right at the moment, so I can't tell you when it is. But we are very excited to get started working on objective number 2.
Great. Thanks, Jenny. All right, let's move to number 3, to Jake.
Hi, everybody. So we are meeting on Tuesday, January 25th, 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And we're going to talk about Objective 3, promoting the adoption of institutional, state, and federal policy solutions that benefit students, enable institutional transformation and local autonomy. So I know there's a focus on trustee boards there in that as well. And our group is going to spend a little bit of time in our initial conversation coming up with some actionable steps, some draft actionable steps that we can bring to the meeting in July and build from there so that we can maximize everybody's time and commitment. And hopefully by the end of our meeting in July, we'll have some action steps that we can add to the strategic plan to strengthen it. So looking forward to working with everybody. Thank you to all of you who've agreed to work with us on this, and looking forward to the collaboration going forward.
Great. Thanks so much, Jake. And then we have Christy Wellington-Baker leading us in objective number 4. Oh, Christy, it looks like you just went on mute. There you go.
Sorry. Double clicking is not helpful. It looks like one of the things that we are planning to focus on is really understanding a little more deeply what the different college data systems look like, so that we can then try and provide some guidance to the colleges around what they're using, how do they disaggregate it, what does disaggregating it mean for them, both at the state level and at the individual institutional level, and then helping colleges go from, okay, we have access to the data, to interpreting it into meaning and action. So looking forward to seeing everyone.
Great. Thanks so much, Christy. Go to the next slide. So we've got a packed SSCN meeting, and that is only the morning. So we are really excited to have everyone with us. So just so everyone knows, we'll have executive directors in the morning, as well as other committee members, which include a mix of center staff, a couple of host organization folks, and JFF team members. So we'll be a good group in the morning, and I'm just really excited to dig into all of this with you. So feel free on Basecamp, through email, if you have questions for a team you're participating in or a team that you are not working with, let's share those and get them out and really dig into these conversations. So I want to just briefly touch on the afternoon portion of the meeting. So this, again, is with a larger group, executive directors and strategic partners, and will be primarily focused on peer learning and small group discussions, as Andrea mentioned at the beginning. So again, take a look at the last digest. It has the link to the agenda, and we're really excited to have you all lead some of these discussions, and we hope you are as well. Just one quick logistical update. The last day for registration is this Friday, June 14th. So please make sure that your teams are registered by then. If you need any help with that, just let your JFF state team know, and we can make sure you are good to go. Does anyone have questions about the SSCN meeting before I jump to the PSN meeting? I'll just give folks 1 second in case anyone's typing in the chat. Great. Well, let's go to the next slide. And Becky, if you could also start setting up our polls. So for the PSN meeting, we are in the process of working on a couple of different network engagement activities. And one of those is team time, which we've done in different ways in past meetings. And we actually wanted to reach out to all of you to get a sense of the type of team time you might want at the PSN meeting. So we're about to launch 2 polls. The first is a very simple question. Does your state need a dedicated team time session? Yes or no? And then if yes, which option would you prefer? One is during meals, so this includes the breakfasts and lunches on both days. They do not have programming for the majority of participants. There's, I believe, a small group breakfast happening on one of the days, but that's it. And the other option is concurrent to roundtable discussions. So these are cross-state, cross-participant discussions that are primarily topically focused. So we can offer team time at the same time as this, but that would mean that your team would not be participating in the roundtable discussions. So Becky, I'm going to let you launch the polls themselves, and we're going to see what you all are most interested in. So you should have about a minute to answer each question. So I'm going to just go on mute for a moment. And again, if you have other questions, feel free to send those in the chat. Also, once you are done replying to the poll, you can feel free to answer Cynthia's question in the chat for executive directors.
It looks like there was also a question about registration, so I just wanted to address that while folks are taking the poll. So there is one registration link for both meetings, and then based on your answers, it'll direct you to the meetings that are appropriate for you to register for or for your state team members to register for. So I will share that link momentarily.
I'm going to give just a 10-second warning. Okay. We're going to go ahead and move on. The poll will stay open for a few minutes, but I'm going to I'm going to keep talking so we don't lose time. So again, if you are interested in doing a team time over the cross-functional, the roundtable discussions, please let your JFF state team know by the end of this week so we can make sure we have the appropriate space and logistics and everything set up for you for that. So I'm going to pause one more time. If anyone has questions either via the chat or verbally, feel free to unmute yourself. Looks like folks are interested in Monday dinner, which is great. All right, I'm going to close out the summer meeting section, and feel free to, again, keep putting questions in the chat, and I'm going to turn it over to Stacy Clausen for some network updates and sharing.
I got myself off of mute. Thank you. And I'm going to start by seeing if we can say hello to Abby again. I think we had some technical difficulties at the top of the call. Abby, are you available? Let's try the audio again.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for the welcome. I'm very excited to be here.
Maybe you could share just a few sentences about, what brings you to the Florida Student Success Center.
Sure. So in Florida, the Success Center is located within the Division of Florida Colleges in the Florida Department of Education. I was actually employed here several years ago as the Director of Academic Affairs, and then I transitioned down to Miami-Dade College, where I worked on several pathways initiatives. I was the Director of Academic Pathways down there. So I did that work for a while, and now I have found my way back up to Tallahassee at the Success Center. Very excited to be working on the Pathways initiatives at the statewide level.
Well, glad to have you on the call today as an official welcome, and looking forward to seeing you in person in July.
Thank you. Excited to have you guys down here.
Yes, and thank you for hosting us. I think we already put you to work, didn't we, at the welcome for the so thank you so much, everyone. It was great to hear a bit about some of the activities and initiatives and policies happening in a couple of states today. As Andrea said, we're introducing these opportunities and we're linking them to the strategic plan for the network that Cynthia and Lexi have been talking about, and these 4 objectives that we have that are represented then by committees and the work that you all will be doing. And so looking forward to connecting the peer learning opportunities as we move forward to the work that the committees are doing and aligning that together. I also want to just reflect for a moment and think about the last couple years in the network and what we've been doing together, and just highlight an observation. And that is, we now have a network strategy that was brought forward by centers and led by executive directors and aligned with JFF and our partnership. And we have 4 committees with full representation across the network, and we are launching into the next phase of our work together as a network and as partners. And we have a lot to do, but we've also learned a lot, and we have a strong foundation to build on. And when you look at network theory, one of the key metrics for health is whether the network leaders are bringing forward the direction and strategy of the network itself. And so it's just super exciting to take a step back and look at this work, identify this moment in time as a big step forward in us together starting to envision and execute on our strategy for the future together. So it's important to think about those things and to celebrate those moments, and we'll have a chance to do that even more in July. So I want to thank the network leadership team in particular in leading that work and documenting the network strategy and leading those conversations over the last two times we've been together for the network meetings and bringing that work forward. And thank each of you for the commitments you've made to the committees and moving that forward. We know that that takes time and energy, but we're in this together, and so it's the way forward. We'll see how July goes and what you all put on the table for us for the future. Thank you. So just in the last few minutes, I want to take us through some updates, and I'm going to ask Sarah Deal to I'm going to turn it over to Sarah Deal to give us an update on the First in the World work as one example of a way we can bring more learnings to highlight the work that the centers are doing. Sarah, can I turn it over to you?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me, Stacy?
Yeah, we can hear you. Next
Great.
slide, please. Thank you very much.
Great. Hi, everyone. I'm Sarah Deal. Most of you probably know me as working with Susan Barbetta with the North Carolina Student Success Center. But I also help a project in North Carolina where we partner with JFF, and it's a First in the World grant supported by the U.S. Department of Education. And what we're doing is a research study, a randomized controlled trial, where we look at proactive success coaching and the effects that that has on student retention and credential completion. We're a consortium, a network, if you will, of 10 North Carolina community colleges, and we have a few national partners in addition to JFF. One of those is Aviso Retention, which is a fairly new early alert software that's sort of similar to if you've heard of Starfish or something like that. Aviso Retention is our common data tool, and then DVP Praxis is our evaluation team. What we're doing is actually a validation study done by Bettinger and Baker of Stanford in 2014, and they showed significant results from a third-party coaching company, where students were retained at higher rates even after coaching was complete. So that's just a little bit of background, but we'll talk about what we're actually doing. If we can go to the next slide. So these are our results so far. So through proactive success coaching, we are seeing a statistically significant and positive impact on student retention. And so to orient you to these graphs, if you look at all students, of which there's over 7,000 in the treatment group and over 7,000 in the control group, we're seeing just around a 3 percentage point increase at 18 months of student retention over sort of the baseline condition. And then what's more exciting is that if you look at high-risk students, which we identify through a predictive analytic model as being the most at risk, and those are the students that coaches are trained to reach out to first. And we're seeing an even bigger jump in student retention when you look at those high-risk students. We don't have any credential completion data quite yet, just because it hasn't been long enough. But by the end of the grant, we will be able to follow all 7,000 students through at least 100% completion time, but most of them through 150% or 200% completion time. Next slide, please. So what success coaches do is that they sort of are at the center of this model with the student, and they work to get to know the student on a personal level and on a school level, and they sort of do this referral out to different resources both on campus and in the community. They use a wide variety of strategies to engage students. They text students, they go find students in person, they get referrals from faculty and staff. They have been known to make Facebook pages or reach out through, people that they both know, mutual acquaintances. So the coaches really find any way that they can to get to know the student and develop a relationship. From the very first day of class for the students, they're assigned a coach, and the coach stays with them through their entire academic career, and they assist them with a range of both academic and non-academic support. So it could be anything from study skills to help a student be successful in class, to referral to food pantry, or some of the great resources that Jake was talking about earlier. They sort of help with the whole student. We've been working really closely to align this work with guided pathways in as far as helping the students stay on path, and see it as a really promising practice for colleges and for student outcomes. We're one of 2 validation grants granted by the Department of Education. So we again are a consortium of 10 community colleges, but Georgia State was also a recipient of this grant. And so the University Innovation Alliance, which is 11 four-year public universities, is also validating this. And by the end, I think we'll have a really compelling story to tell about how this helps different groups of students. We'll also be looking at impacts on students by gender, by race, by Pell status. We'll look at the number of increased credits earned in addition to the retention and completion. We're also running a return on investment study because none of this work does any good if colleges can't afford to pay for it. And so we have preliminarily found that just about a 4% increase in retention of a coach's caseload actually equals, in the North Carolina funding model anyways, actually equals the retention being able to pay for the coach and the software and the cost of the project. So kind of a break-even percentage. And luckily our initial results are showing about a 4 percentage point increase. And we're really happy to share what we're learning across the network. We are excited to be presenting at the summer meeting, and we'll have copies of the evaluation report and a white paper that JFF is helping us write, and happy to engage with you in whatever way you all care to engage. So thank you for letting me share a little bit.
Thank you, Sarah. And this is the type of thing we want to make a little more space for, and this doesn't take a lot of time, but we can share a little bit more content and results and learnings and questions that we want to position in this time together. So if you have ideas or you want to, you have questions you want to put out there for the group to discuss, please let us know for future. Next slide, please. So in our last few minutes, just a couple of other announcements. Just want to remind everybody that we have a calendar that includes center events, and we want to make sure that your events are represented there. And even more importantly, we want to make sure that all the center staff and executive directors have an idea of which events that they could attend in other states. So we have, we've asked that in the state updates in the past to provide a list of those things, of those events that you would love to have others attend. And we're doing that again in this update, but want to just remind everybody that we have that available. We have that information available all year round. And just to invite those states who are not participating in the network demonstration project, that there is a pool of funding that we have to sponsor that type of learning exchange, is what we're calling it. So reach out to your state teams if you have an event you'd like to attend or you have ideas about that. of course, any of the states are able to attend if that's something the executive director has identified. But that funding is specifically for the non-network demonstration projects because they aren't participating in that funding and services, and we want to make sure that there's support there for that learning exchange. I wanted to ask Laura or Naima to share a little bit of an update on that. Can you jump in? I know Laura had to leave a little bit early. She might be off. Naima?
I think Laura's still here. I can see her.
Oh, okay.
I want to give her a second to get off mute if she is.
Taking a phone call. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you, Laura. Thank you.
Okay, great. So I wanted to share that we're having a data workshop in July, on July 11th, because it's going to happen before we share out our center updates and calendars of activities. It is a full day. It has been informed by primarily our Chief Institutional Research Officers group and other stakeholders at our colleges who want the opportunity to have a more in-depth professional development experience. We do bring that group together quarterly for meetings. So this will be a longer day, starting at 9 in the morning and running through 4. And in the morning, we're going to be working with Sue Cleary from ASA Research, thanks to the support of JFF and the Student Success Center Network Services, to do a workshop on developing a data plan to support and enhance decision making, and also some work around data communications. And then after a lunch break, we will have our partner, John Fink from Community College Research Center, along with one of our retired, although we didn't want him to retire, data coaches, Tom Prendergrass from North Central State College. And they're going to be talking about strategies for using the Guided Pathways metrics to measure and improve student success reforms. They're also going to be training the group on some new Tableau program enrollment dashboard tools that we are rolling out that look at what programs and pathways students are enrolled in and what kinds of both transfer outcomes and labor market outcomes those students are ending up seeing after they leave us. So we're looking forward to the day. Again, it's really in-depth professional development, specifically for kind of the IR lead and IR office audience. And we would welcome anyone from another center who is building up research efforts or would like to come and observe for the day. Is there anything else you want me to add, Naima?
Nope, that was perfect. Thank you.
Oh, I didn't say where it was, though.
Oh.
I did say July 11th, I think. July 11th at Columbus State, so in Columbus. It's lovely here in the summer.
Awesome.
Thank you for sharing, Laura. And this is just the type of knowledge management, knowledge development, and network engagement opportunities we want to continue to evolve and increase as we move ahead. So thanks for sharing that, and reach out to Laura directly if you're interested in attending, and we'll make sure that you all have a little bit more information as we send out the next digest so that you can look ahead at your calendars. And just a reminder, if you want to attend that as part of the learning exchange for non-network demonstration project states, we have those funds available to sponsor those opportunities. So thanks. We'll be doing more of this. And I want to, next slide, please. I want to end by just a couple of reminders. So thank you so much for your time today and spending this time with us and getting ready for the July event. There's the feedback survey, the social network analysis, registration, as Becky shared in the chat. There's a link to that due this week. And then the updates due, and you can see the deadlines there. If you have any questions about that, just please reach out. And I want to end by thanking, I know we're at our time, but don't want to end without thanking Jenny and Nika, Jake, and Sarah Deal for sharing out the work that you all are doing in your centers and states. And then to, again, officially welcome Abby and Andrew as new executive directors. Really excited to see everybody in July and looking forward to it. Thank you, everyone.